It began as a distant flicker on the edge of deep space anomaly, so small that most sensors barely caught it. The fleets gathered there, a coalition of alien armadas representing half a dozen proud civilizations, had no reason to fear. They were veterans of countless conflicts, masters of the void, and they had crushed every lesser species that dared to resist their expansion. But this was different. The flicker grew steady and deliberate, cutting through the emptiness with an unnatural precision. It wasn't a random signal. It was a ship. It was human. For most of the assembled fleets, humans were little more than rumor ghosts from the outer spiral, a primitive race said to live on a dying blue world, still bound by gravity and fear. No one had ever seen a human warship. No one believed they even had one. Yet here it was, breaking from the black like a shadow made of steel and fury. It moved in silence, without the bright ion trails of alien drives or the pulsing glow of plasma shields. It drifted almost lazily, as if it had all the time in the galaxy. But every experienced captain there felt it immediately, an instinctive unease that no sensor could explain. At first, the admirals laughed. A single ship? One of them barked across the comms, his voice crackling with static. Is this the best the humans can offer? They had brought thousands armadas spanning entire systems, carriers so vast they cast artificial eclipses. Against that, a lone vessel seemed absurd. But their laughter didn't last long. The human ship didn't respond to hails. It didn't change course. It simply glided forward, like a predator testing the water before the strike. As it drew closer, the alien scanners began to fail. One by one, data streams filled with static and ghost readings. Energy signatures vanished. Hull scans returned blanks, as though the ship wasn't there at all. Then came the visual FIDA, single grainy image that froze everyone on the command decks. The human warship was enormous, larger than their dreadnoughts. But it wasn't sleek or graceful like theirs. It looked brutal, jagged, built for endurance rather than beauty. Every plate of its armor seemed scorched, scarred from 100 battles it had clearly survived. Along its side, a simple marking gleamed white letters painted by hand, as if to mock the perfection of alien design. Silence fell across the fleets. The admirals exchanged uncertain glances. This wasn't supposed to happen. No species had ever faced them and lived. But there it was, a human vessel standing against the impossible. A few younger officers whispered that maybe this was a warning, a message sent before something worse arrived. Others scoffed until the first energy wave hit. It wasn't a weapon strike. It was something else, an electromagnetic pulse that washed through every ship at once, shutting down weapons, lights, and communications in a heartbeat. The stars vanished into darkness. Only one image remained, flickering on every failing screen. The human ship, still moving forward, its lights glowing red through the void. And then, just before the blackout consumed everything, a single human voice cut through the static comm, cold and unmistakably certain. "Now you see us." The voice echoed long after the comms went dead, carrying through the cold vacuum like an impossible whisper. The alien captains stared at their darkened consoles, hearts pounding with something few of them had ever known: fear. The systems slowly flickered back to life one by one, but the damage was done. Entire weapon grids were offline, shields weakened, and half their fleet formations were scattered. The human ship hadn't fired a single shot, yet it had brought thousands of warships to their knees with a single move. In the command bridge of the lead cruiser, the High Admiral stood motionless, his hands gripping the railing as he stared at the tactical display. The map before him was chaos signals broken, allies unresponsive. How did they do this? One of his officers stammered. No one answered. No known technology could have caused such a coordinated collapse. They had faced enemies with powerful weapons before, but this was something different. It was as if the human ship had reached inside their systems, studied them, and chosen exactly how to break them all within seconds. Reports began to come in from the outer vessels. Some described strange visual distortions, flashes of movement near their hulls that sensors couldn't confirm. Others claimed to hear faint transmissions in old Earth languages, snippets of speech they couldn't translate but somehow understood. It was impossible, yet every voice on the comms carried the same undertone panic. Meanwhile, aboard the human warship, the crew moved in perfect silence. Every motion was measured, precise. The ship wasn't new. Its metal bones carried scars from wars no one in this part of the galaxy had ever heard of. It had survived battles against machines, plagues, and the endless void itself. It wasn't built to impress, it was built to endure. At its center stood the ship's commander, watching the sensor readings as they stabilized. His face was calm, eyes reflecting the faint red light of the displays. "They've seen us now," he said quietly to his second officer. She nodded, her voice steady but low. "They'll call for reinforcements." "Let them," he replied. "They still think this is a battle." The crew understood what he meant. For them, this wasn't a war of conquests, it was survival. Humanity had spent centuries being ignored, underestimated, pushed into the cold corners of the galaxy. Every major species had looked at them and seen only weakness. But humans had learned. They had adapted, built in silence, and waited for the day they would no longer be overlooked. Back among the alien fleets, the Admiral finally gave the order to attack. Plasma cannons charged, targeting systems recalibrated, and energy built across the Armadas. Thousands of beams lanced through the void toward the lone human ship. The blast lit up the darkness like a newborn star. For a brief moment, they thought it was over. But as the light faded, the human warship still stood untouched. Its surface glowed faintly, reflecting the dying embers of their assault. The alien crews watched in disbelief as new signals appeared on their sensors, dozens of them, then hundreds. Each one matched the same human signature. The Admiral's voice trembled as he spoke. "That can't be possible. There was only one." Yet out there, emerging from the shadows of deep space, more shapes began to form, silent, immense, and unmistakably human. And then the coms crackled again, that same calm voice returning through the static. "You wanted to see what we've become." The fleets held their breath as the stars dimmed once more, and the human armada began to move. The first human armada's formation spread across the stars like a silent storm. Each ship moved with purpose, keeping tight formations that no alien fleet had ever seen before. There were no signals exchanged, no visible coordination, yet every vessel turned and shifted in perfect rhythm. To the alien admirals watching from their trembling bridges, it looked less like a fleet and more like one living organism. The High Admiral felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Every instinct screamed to retreat, but pride held him in place. His civilization had ruled the stars for millennia. Retreat was unthinkable. "Transmit again," he ordered. "Tell them this sector is under our control. They're violating the peace accords." His voice cracked at the last word. The communications officer hesitated but obeyed. Moments later, the human reply came through a burst of static, followed by a calm single sentence: "You never made peace with us." Those words hit harder than any weapon could. Across the fleet's captains exchanged uneasy looks. Some of them had been part of the original campaigns that drove human colonies into exile centuries ago. Back then, humanity had seemed fragile, a species barely clinging to its homeworld after losing the outer systems. No one expected them to survive, let alone return with power like this. Inside the human command vessel, the atmosphere was cold but focused. The commander stood by a projection showing dozens of alien worlds that had once traded with Earth before betrayal and isolation. "They think we came for revenge," the second officer murmured. "They're wrong," the commander replied quietly. "We came to show them what they created." Elsewhere, in one of the smaller human ships, a young technician watched the alien transmissions flicker across her display. Her parents had told stories of those days, the starvation, the evacuations, the endless nights waiting for help that never came. She'd grown up in the shadow of those memories. Now, seeing the enemy's faces filled with fear, she felt something she couldn't name. Not triumph, not anger, just something deeper, heavier. Meanwhile, among the alien fleets, confusion turned to argument. Several commanders wanted to withdraw and regroup, but others demanded a counterattack. Old rivalries flared. They had united against humanity only because it was convenient, but now that unity began to fracture. Some whispered that the humans had allies hidden in the dark, unseen powers guiding their return. Others said the humans were using forbidden technology, something ancient and dangerous. None of them could agree, and their hesitation cost them precious time. The human ships began to spread out, surrounding the central alien fleet without firing a shot. Their silence was worse than any weapon. The High Admiral watched helplessly as his tactical screens filled with red markers. "They're not attacking," his strategist said, voice trembling. "They're watching us." And that was true. From every ship, human sensors scanned the fleets, mapping every weak point, every system, every captain's decision. It was a test stand. The aliens knew it. Far above the chaos, the commander stared at the stars. "They still don't understand," he said softly. "We're not here to destroy them. We're here to end what they started." The second officer turned toward him, uneasy. "And if they resist?" The commander's gaze hardened. "Then they'll learn what humanity does when it's cornered." In the distance, the alien armadas began to move again, their engines burning bright against the void. The silence between both sides stretched thin like the calm before a storm that neither could escape. The void between the fleets seemed to hum with anticipation, as though space itself was holding its breath. Red alerts flashed across alien bridges, the warning lights painting faces with pale streaks of panic. Every captain knew that the humans were not just ships, they were a force of will, a presence that carried the weight of survival itself. Orders were shouted, engines flared, and plasma grids lit the darkness, yet none of it seemed to matter. The human armada moved like shadows through the chaos, weaving between fire and destruction without a hint of hesitation. On one of the alien dreadnoughts, the tactical officers struggled to keep the fleet coordinated. Sensors kept flickering, systems lagged, and reports of strange interference poured in from every direction. "Sir," she said, voice tight, "they're ships. They're predicting our moves. It's as if they know what we'll do before we do it." The Admiral's knuckles whitened around the control rail. "Impossible," he muttered, though even he felt the truth. Across centuries, his people had faced countless enemies, but none that seemed to think faster than their own minds. Meanwhile, aboard the lead human vessel, the commander observed every flicker of alien activity with calm precision. His crew moved in synchronized silence, hands on controls, eyes scanning the void. "They're scared," he murmured. "Good. Fear is the first step to understanding." A young officer glanced at him, tension visible even in her composed posture. "They'll strike soon. They can't hold back forever." The commander nodded without looking away from the holographic display. "Let them. When they attack, they'll show us everything they're capable of. And we'll adapt." From another perspective, deep in the outer wing of the human fleet, reconnaissance ships moved in tight loops, scanning the flanks of the alien armadas. The pilots had never faced an enemy so vast, so organized, yet every movement was calculated. Every maneuver was precise, almost surgical. "I've never seen them fight like this," one pilot whispered into the com. "It's almost inhuman." The reply came steady and cold. "They are human. That's enough." Back in the alien command center, frustration boiled over into chaos. Divisions erupted into heated debates. Some argued for retreat, while others demanded total annihilation of the human ships. The High Admiral banged his fist on the console, silencing the room for a heartbeat. "We will not be defeated by one species, one world. Attack." He gave the order, but hesitation lingered like a shadow over his fleet. Generals who had served with him for decades exchanged uncertain glances, the first doubt creeping into minds trained never to fear. Then the first strike came. Not a full volley, but a precise, coordinated assault aimed at the human fleet's outer defenses. Energy beams lanced across the void, tearing through space with lethal intent. For a moment, the alien commanders allowed themselves hope. Their weapons were the strongest in the sector. Surely the humans would falter, but they didn't. The beams hit the outer human shields and simply vanished. The shields absorbed the energy and redirected it, not in retaliation, but in a display of controlled power that no one could explain. Red lights on alien consoles turned into panic sirens. For every strike they launched, the humans responded with something unpredictable, something almost intelligent. The void shook with tension, the calm before the storm. Both sides paused, calculating, anticipating, waiting for the other to make a fatal mistake. And somewhere in the middle of it all, the lead human commander leaned over the tactical map and whispered, almost to himself, "Now they'll learn what cornered humanity is capable of." Every captain, every ship, every sensor was alive with fear and anticipation. The moment of truth had arrived, the moment that could change the balance of the galaxy forever. And yet no one knew who would strike first, or who would survive the storm about to break. The tension in the void was electric, every ship frozen on the edge of action when the unexpected happened. From deep beyond the outer rim, sensors picked up movements low at first, then accelerating, a formation no one had anticipated. Alien admirals froze, scanning their displays, trying to make sense of it. The human fleet, they thought, was already overwhelming, but now there were more, far larger, far stranger shapes emerging from the darkness. Not just human ships, but massive vessels, unlike anything catalogued in any star charts. Hulls glinted with a sheen that looked almost organic, curves that defied conventional engineering, weapons embedded so seamlessly they seemed like extensions of the ship itself. The High Admiral's voice cracked as he barked orders that no one could follow fast enough. What is that? Identify now." The sensor officer shook her head. "Impossible. They're human. But not like the ones we've seen. They're evolved." Across the fleet, the other commanders murmured in disbelief. No one had prepared for this. The humans had already shattered every expectation, but this was something else entirely. Aboard the lead human warship, the commander's eyes didn't leave the projection of the new vessels. "There are brothers and sisters from the colonies," he said quietly, almost reverently. "Those who survived in isolation, who adapted without our oversight. They've been preparing, learning, now they're here." His second officer swallowed hard. "They're even more advanced than we are. How did they survive undetected for so long?" The commander's lips pressed into a thin line. They weren't hiding. They were waiting for the right moment. The new human ships moved with an eerie grace, slipping into position around the alien armadas, as if the vacuum itself obeyed them. Communication between the two human forces was minimal but precise, coordinated in ways the aliens couldn't comprehend. Sensors on the alien ships began to overload. Systems flickered and failed under strange pulses of energy emitted by the newcomers. Weapons discharged prematurely. Shields collapsed. The alien fleets were no longer just facing one human armada, they were facing two, perfectly synchronized, completely unstoppable by conventional strategy. Panic rippled through the alien command centers.
Oh.
Some captains tried to regroup, calling for retreats or reinforcements from distant sectors. But long-range sensors detected the new human vessels cutting off escape routes. Entire sectors of their fleet were trapped, boxed in by forces they had assumed were primitive and inconsequential. We underestimated them, all of us. A general screamed over comes only to be drowned out by a wave of static as energy fields from the humans jammed every transmission. Even among the original human crews, the sudden arrival of the second force raised questions. They had expected to face fear and resistance, but now an entire secret armada built in isolation had joined the fight. The commander allowed himself a faint, grim smile. "They're not just here to fight," he said. "They're here to finish what we started." As the alien fleet scrambled in confusion, the void erupted with unannounced energy bursts, human vessels attacking with unmatched precision, cutting off retreat and disabling entire systems without firing a single shot that could be called conventional. The alien armadas began to falter, their formations collapsing under pressure they could not predict or withstand. And through it all, the calm, unwavering voice of the original human commander echoed across the void once more. "You thought we were alone? You thought you understood humanity? You were wrong." The stars themselves seemed to tremble as the two human armadas closed in, leaving the alien fleets trapped between unprecedented power and an unknown strategy that could change the balance of the galaxy forever. The alien fleets were disoriented, scattered, and on the brink of collapse. Every sensor reading showed human ships where none should have been. Every weapon strike rendered useless by shields and tactics the alien commanders couldn't anticipate. The High Admiral's face was pale as he realized that retreat was no longer an option. The humans had cut off every exit, surrounded them in a trap that was impossible to escape. Desperation turned into terror as his fleets faltered, systems failing one by one under precise surgical attacks. The lead human commander watched from his flagship calm and unyielding as the alien formations began to crumble. "Target the command centers," he ordered, voice steady. "I disable their leadership. They leave their soldiers intact. They will understand later. Human ships surged forward with synchronized precision, moving like shadows through the void, disabling weapon grids, severing communication nodes, and leaving entire divisions paralyzed without a single casualty among human crews. From the perspective of the alien generals, it was chaos beyond comprehension. Reports flooded in dreadnoughts frozen mid-battle, carriers spinning out of control, fleets unable to respond. They're not just fighting, one commander gasped. They're rewriting the rules of war. Panic rippled through the Armadas as the humans closed in on the central command ship. On board the human flagship, the second officer observed the alien command vessel through targeting feeds. "It's over," she said quietly, almost in awe. "They're going to surrender." The commander nodded. "Not just surrender. They're going to learn what it means to face the consequences of underestimating humanity." The final strike was not a weapon, but a demonstration of control. The flagship projected an electromagnetic pulse across the alien fleets, temporarily paralyzing engines, weapons, and communications simultaneously. Lights dimmed, screens flickered, and the alien forces were forced to drift helplessly in the void, powerless and stunned. For a moment, silence reigned, a silence filled with awe and fear, the kind only comes before total defeat. The humans opened a secure communication channel directly to the High Admiral. "Your fleets are at our mercy," the commander said. "You have choices. Leave this sector and never return, or face total annihilation. The decision is yours." The alien admiral hesitated, fear etched deep into his features. For centuries, he had believed his species ruled the stars. Now, stripped of pride, stripped of options, he bowed to the reality of human strategy and survival. "We will leave," he said, voice trembling. "We will never return." For the first time in centuries, the humans had forced an alien armada to retreat. Victory was theirs, not through brute force alone, but through intelligence, coordination, and unyielding resolve. Across the fleet, crews allowed themselves brief smiles and nods, knowing the moment marked the turning point of history. But as the humans began to consolidate their formations, ready to escort the alien fleet safely out of the sector, a new signal appeared on every sensor, a pulse unlike anything recorded before. The lead human commander froze, recognition dawning in his eyes. It can't be. It's not possible. The pulse rippled through space, disrupting both human and alien systems simultaneously. Across the fleets, ships trembled as shields faltered and engines hiccuped. On every display, a single ominous message blinked. "Humanity, we've been waiting." The commander's jaw tightened. So, the real challenge has only just begun, and in the cold void of space. The next threat revealed itself, an unknown force far older and far more powerful than anything either side had imagined. Waiting silently, watching humanity's rise. The calm before the true storm had only just begun. The void was quiet again, but it was no longer empty. The alien fleets had retreated, leaving behind a field of drifting ships, damaged but alive. Humanity had won this battle, yet the strange pulse that had interrupted systems across the fleets lingered like a shadow in every sensor reading. The lead human commander studied the data carefully, his expression unreadable. "We've forced them to see humanity," he said softly, "but the galaxy has bigger questions than this victory." Across the human armadas, crews worked methodically, repairing ships, recalibrating shields, and securing supplies. The young technicians who had once watched the skies with fear now moved with quiet pride, understanding that their work had changed the course of history. "We survived," one whispered to a comrade, still staring at the remnants of alien ships. "Not just survived. We made them understand." Her companion nodded, eyes reflecting the pale light of the stars. "We showed them what humanity can do when it's cornered and when it refuses to be ignored." In the command center of the flagship, the second officer turned to the commander. "Do you think they'll ever try again?" she asked, concern threading her calm tone. The commander shook his head slowly. "Perhaps. But next time, they'll remember what it means to face humanity united. We didn't just defeat them. We changed the rules of engagement for the entire sector." Yet the pulse in the background remained. Its origin was unknown, and while it hadn't attacked the humans directly, its presence was a reminder that the galaxy held far greater forces than any single species could predict. Sensors traced the faint signals back to distant coordinates far beyond the edges of mapped space. Someone or something has been watching, the commander said quietly, waiting for us to step forward. We've won this fight, but the real journey is only beginning. Even as the Armadas regrouped and celebrated their victory, crews exchanged stories and reflections. The older officers spoke of human history, of planets abandoned, colonies scattered, civilizations underestimated. The younger generation realized that every trial, every hardship, had prepared them for this moment. Humanity's strength was not in technology alone, nor in weapons, but in resilience, ingenuity, and the willingness to endure when all else seemed lost. The alien fleets, meanwhile, limped back to their homeworlds, shaken and disoriented. Reports of the human tactics and the arrival of the secret armada would echo across generations. They had underestimated humans for centuries, and the lesson had been brutal. Yet in their fear, there was a grudging respect, one that would shape diplomacy, trade, and future interactions across the sector. Humanity had earned a reputation not through conquest, but through survival and calculated power. As the human fleets drifted in formation under the distant stars, the commander looked out into the darkness. "We've faced what they thought was impossible," he said. "We've proven that humanity can rise, even from the shadows." The second officer watched him, a small smile forming, and yet, we're still learning. The pulse in the void remained faint, a reminder that the galaxy was vast and full of unknowns. Humanity had survived, had triumphed, but the story was far from over. And yet, for the first time in generations, humans had a clear place among the stars, a place earned through courage, intelligence, and the refusal to be dismissed. As the Armada set course for their next destination, systems humming steadily, the commander turned toward his crew. "Prepare for what's ahead," he said. "The galaxy is bigger than any of us imagined, but so are we." And with that, the fleets moved forward, a quiet yet unstoppable force among the stars, leaving behind fear, respect, and the undeniable truth. Humanity had arrived, and it would not be ignored.